All right, guys, so all the bits and pieces have dried off. I've done some inspecting with my loupe to make sure that all the pivot points are at least somewhat clean, that none of the axles are bent. So making sure that all the parts are at least somewhat usable. I've noticed that here on the center wheel that I couldn't remove because it's peened over. There's actually quite significant wear here at the very top. But on a $30 watch, that I can't even find out what the movement model or number is. This is impossible to find any parts for it. I could probably just buy another one of those dollar watches. I found out that this movement is most likely made by New Haven Watch Company. They were in production from really like long time, 1872 till 1956. So I don't know what year this is from. Some New Haven watches that have a similar looking movement, they actually have some date stamped into it. This one here has absolutely no stamping, no markings. Of course, the dial has the Montgomery Ward branding on it. This looks like a New Haven movement. I just don't know exactly what model. So we're going to start on the other side. Right here, because we have to insert the ratchet wheel. If I can pick it up, here we go. The ratchet wheel goes over here. So we have to put this in here first, so that when we push in the mainspring barrel, this ratchet wheel is held down by those two standoffs here. And once the mainspring barrel is in place, this doesn't fit under anymore. So we have the mainspring barrel, the Arbor, and this Arbor is actually a two-piece. The steel axle actually moves in this little brass piece that is also the hook that hooks onto the end of the mainspring. The barrel also has a little hook on it. That's where the outer end of the spring hooks to. So I've already gotten my mainspring winders out here. The largest one I have is unfortunately not even close to the large size of this mainspring barrel. But these ones here are actually made for pocket watches, so I'm kind of surprised that there is not a larger one. And I have two winders, and I think looking at the Arbor size, we're gonna go with a larger one. And I don't have mainspring grease, Mobius 8200, but I do want to lubricate the spring a little bit. Not lubricate, but put a little bit of corrosion protection on there. So we're going to use that stuff. So I just put some grease on my fingertips, that I have a thin layer of grease in between my fingers. And now we're just going to run the spring through if I can, because the spring is really on the stiff side. This light smear of grease on the spring itself. And so now we have to make sure, so the spring goes in this orientation, that we have to crank it up into my winder here, so that when I click it into the mainspring barrel, that we have it in the right orientation. And now we're going to put our little winder in here, and we got to make sure that it hooks onto, oh yeah, it hooks right on. Let's see if we can convince it to go back into its barrel. There you go. Guarantee every time I'm recording something, my phone has to make a ruckus. There you go. So then this taller one goes next to it. There. And then we have like that. Then we have the pallet fork, the one that has no jewels, and that sits right next to the escape wheel. There. And here's the pivot for the balance wheel. So, but we're not quite done yet. We're not quite there yet. So we have the setting lever spring right here that needs to go on here. Okay, we get the setting lever spring back in place. Now we can put the setting lever itself back on there. Like so. So we still have to put the winding pinion in here. In which orientation is the question? Maybe the other way around, huh? Yeah. So the pinion goes to the outside, and this little steel plate that it is slit in goes to the inside. Like that. Okay. And now we need to grab this big old bridge, cover plate, whatever you want to call it. Now we just have to line all those standoffs and the little pinions. And the pivots, they need to all be lined up perfectly. Huh. Oh, yeah. There's the little steel plate that holds the winding pinion in place. No. Go in place. Guys, I gotta look at this off camera real quick. So I think I got most of the pivots lined up. I can see the ends of the pivots sticking out of their respective little holes here. So that's good. Only thing is that it doesn't slip and slide on all the way. So what I'm going to do so that it doesn't fall apart, I'm just going to put a couple screws in here. 2 of them have to come out because the mainspring bridge is held down by those 2 screws, but I'm just going to put them in here very gently, just so that the stuff doesn't fly apart. And then I'm going to take another close look at the positions of all the pivots. Why is my table so wobbly here? All right, so now I have 3 screws in there that just hold on that main plate. And now I need to make sure that, yeah, my balance wheel is not in its pivots. So I finally figured out why things are not lining up the way they are supposed to. If you look down here, like right there, right there, that's the end of the pallet fork, and that's where the impulse jewel from the balance is supposed to interface, and it's not lining up perfectly. So the impulse jewel is not inside that end of the pallet fork. So now I'm gonna have to take the 3 screws loose and then try to lift the top plate here, this cover, off, line up things without losing everything. So without dropping all the other pivots back out of their respective pivot points. So now we get it all figured out, and now we can secure the screws a little tighter so that stuff stays in place. All the pivots are where they are supposed to be. The impulse pin on the balance is interfacing with a pallet fork. Oh, let's take this one out. This is where the cover goes. Let's leave it in for now. So like 3 mounting points is a pretty good ratio, I would say. So here now our manipulated spring with the Arbor. And the Arbor has those 2 flat sides, and that needs to line up with the ratchet wheel, which has the same shape. And so now we're going to try to get this in there. Okay, let's look at the back side. There you go. I just had to slide the ratchet wheel left and right a little bit until that Arbor lined up with the ratchet wheel. So now we can take this one screw back out. Take that out. Then put the... oh, that's wrong. It goes this way. And then we're going to go around and lubricate the pivot points of everything. Yeah. Yeah. And one more. Yeah. My finger cuts are really sticky. I'm going through those pretty quickly. If any one of you has a finger cut brand that's not quite as tight, these are size large, and my finger is, I guess, larger than large. Let's work on getting the winding stem and the crown, yeah, in here, so we can wind it up a little bit and then see if this comes alive. Okay. Okay, and now I'm going to turn it over again so that the mechanism that holds the stem and crown in place falls back into its natural habitat like this. Yeah. All right, and we're going to see, is our balance... Yeah, that looks good. Balance is working, running, moving, and now we're going to give it a little bit of a wind. And it jumps into action. That's pretty cool, isn't it? Once you had a watch completely apart, you just give it a little bit of a wind and it by itself jumps into action down there. You can see the end of the pallet fork that interfaces with the impulse pin here in this case on the balance. I also marked my balance wheel with a Sharpie so we can see what the amplitude is. At the moment, with only a little bit of a wind, it's not that great. We're not even at 180 degrees, but with those cheap dollar watches where everything is just running metal on metal, so now we're almost at 180 degrees amplitude. So now we're roughly at 180 degrees. So that's good. All right, let's go around and do some lubrication here. For all the faster moving parts, I'm going to use Mobius 8000, which is a, it's an inexpensive lubricant for an inexpensive watch. Just giving each pivot here a tiny amount of lube. Tiny. We did all these. We can do... oh yeah, off camera I applied a little bit of lubrication on the pivot points of the balance. They are not drilled through, so I can't add lubrication, so I had to do that before I put the balance in place, but that's okay. So let's flip this around here real quick without destroying things. There you go. Here the same. There's one. Here's the escape wheel pivot. I know that most people don't lubricate the pivots of the pallet fork, but since this is metal on metal, this is steel on brass, I will still do it. Here's the second hand pivot. Okay. So now I'm going to switch to a little bit thicker, the 1300, and just give all the moving pieces here in the winding works a little bit. Most people use grease for those parts, or I don't know, not sure. There are so many pivots in here that I can't lubricate because the parts are pressed in place or pinned in place, unfortunately. Let's give the click a little bit of some lubrication. And that's pretty much already all we can do here. I mean, we don't need to lubricate the end of the Arbor here going into the ratchet wheel, but I did it anyways. Yeah, let's flip this around one more time. I just stopped the watch accidentally with my finger. Let's do a little bit of 1300 on the pivot of the barrel arbor. This is all really large, so I like to give it a little more. All right. We have a running movement. Let me give it a complete full wind. Winding seems to be working. Oh, we're already at the full wind here, almost. So let's see. Yeah, we about have 180 degrees amplitude, because my black dot that I made on the wheel over here spins this way, goes back, and spins this way. So 180 degrees each direction. Yep, that's good. Let me put this on the time grapher. If I see any kind of usable results, I'm going to show you. So let's not dwell on beat error, amplitude, and all that kind of stuff. We know this is a really cheaply made watch. It's not a high quality movement. Parts are worn. It's probably 60 or 70 years old. So we're just going to slap it back together. It's cleaned, even though it doesn't look clean. It's lubricated. Now we're going to put the last few pieces in place. Here's the second hand. Well, that's where the second hand goes. There we go. So we have everything in place. I can see the pivot or the pinion, no, for the second hand, that needs to be installed first. And it's pretty small, that's for sure. So we're gonna just line it up roughly. So like that. I have two of those second hand pushers, and I'm going to use the one that is the right size for this one here. And we're just going to push it on there. Then the hour hand. And we need the bigger one. Sometimes, yeah, mine are not big enough for this particular one here. We're just going to use the tweezer method. So now we need to stick the winding stem back in so we can set, yeah, like that. So now that's secured. Now we can probably adjust the hands. We have to adjust the hands. Set the hands to exactly 12 o'clock noon. And then grab the minute hand and line that up perfectly. and then push it on. You definitely got to make sure that the hands don't touch each other. And so now we can spin this around and see if anything is touching here, but that doesn't seem to be the case. It's pretty grindy, I gotta say. Yeah, looks pretty good. All right, and now we gotta get the winding stem back out. So the thing that I just secured here on the back side, we now have to undo, flip it upside down. We can also help it here on the side a little bit. And then this comes out. So now we can put the movement on the cushion. Put the case over it. Like so. Then flip it over. Like so. Make sure it's all in there correctly. Then we're going to, again, put the stem back in. Of course, now that it is in the case, that mechanism is not as freely moving anymore. So my little locking pin doesn't come out by itself, of course. Okay, so my locking mechanism is unlocked. So now we just have to get the stem in all the way. Here we go. Okay, and now we can push this down, take my pliers, put the locking mechanism in place. Yeah, like that. And now really the only piece that's missing is the case back. Here's the case back. So there it is. Still yellow, still a fingerprint on the dial, but it's running. It's keeping time somewhat. Here's the back, nicely cleaned up, polishing a little bit. It's pretty good actually. And the crystal, besides the yellowed aspect, which gives it this nice vintage look. I like the fingerprint on here. Oh, who knows? Anyways, I'm going to give it a little bit more of a wind. And put it on the time grapher one more time now in the case and see if that does it anything. And how about we set it? It's 11:45. Yeah, this is all really rough. Man. Yeah, it's 11:46 now. Oop. So that's 11:46. And now we're just going to keep it running. There you have it. Montgomery Ward with a New Haven movement. Or maybe it's a New Haven watch and they just slapped their brand name on there. Compensated. It's compensated now. Alrighty, guys. Thank you for watching. I know this one was a rough one. This was officially my first complete disassembly of a watch, cleaning and reassembly. Probably messed up the lubrication pretty badly, but really on this watch it doesn't matter. It's a pile. Anyway, so I'm gonna keep practicing with cheaper watches. I'll take you along, and if you want to see me struggling, you are right here on this channel. There's gonna be future content. So if you would please give me a like and a subscribe, that would help the channel a lot. I will see you in the next video. Take care.